Hey everybody, welcome back to the Introversion Podcast. A very special episode here today. I'm joined by my new friend, my online friend.
Yes.
He is he is the host of the podcast Sincere Sarcasm and the Online Friend Simulator. You can see him live Wednesday nights on YouTube on the improv show Super Geeked Up. Please welcome Francis, aka the other guy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really super stoked to have you on here, man. You're other than my friend Tommy Danger, who has a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other than him, he's my friend. You know how you just kind of listen to your friend's podcast, but you're like first. You're like the podcast out there in the real world that I listen to regularly. So, so it's really cool, really cool to have you on here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So a little backstory of how we kind of met and connected. I might have mentioned this a little bit in the email. I guess it was probably almost a year ago, sometime around there. I don't know. You might not even be familiar with this, but introversion.com. Introversion is the name of the podcast, but introversion.com is actually my blog, but it's not necessarily like a writing blog. There's a lot of visuals. Like I do a lot of photography and drawing and art and animation and all this kind of stuff. So it's like interactive. And I started this project back in the early 2000s, and it was a big hit back then because nobody was really doing that in the early days of the internet. And then I got busy with life and I kind of stopped doing it around 2010. And I decided to bring it back before this whole pandemic hit. But early in 2020, I was like, you know what? It's a new decade. I'm going to bring the project back, make this interactive visual blog happen again. But I thought adding the podcast layer onto it would be cool as something new for me to try out. And so I started doing research online last year as to is there already a podcast out there called Introversion? Obviously, I would run into some trouble there. And to my pleasure, there was no podcast out there called Introversion. But when I did a search in Spotify for Introversion under podcasts, I think yours was either the top result or it was like one of the top 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't even know if you put that in your keywords or if that's completely like a shocker to you, but
that's a shocker to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I discovered your podcast. And obviously the name, the Online Friend Simulator, and like the style of it with the type, I was like, okay, this definitely sounds different than all the other podcasts that are like, have some like snazzy like cooking with Jane or just like so I was like, all right, it intrigued me and I clicked through and I immediately started listening and I was like, all right, this is cool, this is listenable. And and then you drop your little regular recurring Star Wars soundbite of Han Solo.
Mm-hmm. Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
And I was like, okay, this is my guy right here. This is my guy. Like, yeah. That's that moment where I got hooked.
I need to bring that back. I've been neglecting it lately simply because, especially in my last few, I've been much more, I guess, reflective lately. Uh-huh. So, yeah, I've my production value has kind of gone down, but it's been replaced with more thoughtfulness. Maybe, I don't know.
So I am kind of curious. Oh yeah, I love that. And I think you also sampled from what was it? King of the Hill, Bobby, right?
Yes, yeah. That's one of my original, yeah.
So I'm not even a huge King of the Hill fan, but just hearing Bobby, I think he was like, "What
are you talking about? What are you talking about?"
Exactly.
I was like, I love it. That's the kind of flair. I like to bring little pop culture bits into my podcast as well. But yeah, but you seem like you must be super busy these days because I know you've been posting maybe like one episode a month on your podcast. So what have you been up to?
Well, I do a couple of other podcasts. I co-host on a couple other shows, so that's been kind of keeping me busy. Mostly, I've just really been trying to do a lot of self-care during this time right now. Because it's with the isolation and with the needing to be locked down and everything, it can get taxing. So I needed something that really allowed me to just relax a little bit and not have to think about everything. Because as you know, as one of my episodes, I talked about like Twitter and everyone being angry and hating, and it's just a lot of that type of energy, even though you're just reading it, you kind of feed off it after a while. And
Yeah.
I needed to get away from that. So I hope that now that I've actually done, I think, 3 episodes in a row that were of normal schedule, that I'll be able to keep it up and do it that way. But it took some interesting scenarios to happen in my life, or not in my life personally, but just around me, to be like, okay, I'm inspired again to kind of go out there and talk about these things.
Yeah, it's funny how these things can ebb and flow, right? It's like it's kind of
Yeah.
like you get in the mood, and all of a sudden you can just rattle off a bunch of episodes, but if you're not feeling it's kind of that age old dilemma of like, well, do you fake it till you make it, or do you just do what feels right in the moment, and see wherever that leads you? Or do you tend to subscribe to more of the latter? Like, if you're feeling something, go with it, and if not, then
Well, yeah, because I don't want to be someone who puts something out there and I don't, just for the sake of putting it out there. It's a
Right.
topic that may be hot right now and I don't really care about it.
right.
Because then there's no passion behind it, or there's no actual feeling behind any of what I'm talking about. And that's kind of what I put out there with Online Friend Simulator, because, yeah, I mean, it was inspired by the fact that more and more people I see online, and including myself, are feeling lonely, and it's getting more isolating even before the pandemic. And so I just wanted a place where people could just hear, a point of view, and hopefully share their own in what I would consider a safe environment. So yeah, if I just forced myself to put out content every week, I feel like the quality would just go down and nobody would care. But as long as it was something I was interested in and actually had feelings about, then yeah, people would gravitate towards that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I do think I think that's why I enjoy your podcast, and why I have a hard time listening to a bunch of other podcasts, is that it's interesting, because I actually kind of want to get into some pop culture stuff with you, because I have this feeling. I was also going to ask you about the whole anger thing on Twitter, because you seem like such a chill guy. It's almost hard for me to picture you getting into these arguments and debates with people like in a vicious way. Maybe I'm wrong
Yeah.
about that. I don't know, but I just get that impression of you that you're just like, all right, you all are screaming at each other. I think you should chill out. I get that sense that's you. But likewise, I feel like you and I probably would disagree in terms of our tastes, like in different pop culture, like shows and music and items a lot. But I feel like even though we might disagree on a lot, I feel like it would be totally fine, because I feel like we would just respect our differences, and I just get that impression. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, when I was talking about, I mean, I don't actually engage with a lot of it's just observation from my end. I don't actually engage too much, because the people who are, here's the thing. I don't like to cause too many waves, really. And what's funny is I actually follow a lot of people whom I don't necessarily agree with about a lot of things, and I have a tendency to want to follow, or I tend to have a tendency to want to be around people who have a different kind of point of view than I do, because I want to get it. I want to understand why a person acts or does certain things. And so I may not yell. I am pretty chill. Again, don't get me wrong. I don't really actually start yelling at these people or getting angry. I save that for the podcast. But when I see it, I really do have to kind of hold back and say, and stop myself from pretty much knowing that I could destroy this pseudo internet friendship by speaking my mind and trying to point out, well, where I feel they are wrong. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily my place to do that, because no matter how logical or factual or whatever I am, and it doesn't matter how much I put out there, if you're into that one thing, if you're into that anger, that hate towards that thing, no matter what I say, it's not going to change your mind.
Yeah,
I
right.
can, yeah. So I just feel
I
like
was just about to ask you that, but you just answered it basically. Like, do you feel like you nowadays, especially in 2020, do you feel like you can't really convince anybody of anything, really, right? I mean, like, especially not the people who are so adamant in their views about.
which kind of seems to be everyone, really. There are very few people who.
Well,
seem to
I don't
have-
feel like that. Like
Oh, good.
I'm open to being convinced. Similarly to you, I have surrounded myself. Interestingly enough, I had this one friend on, Christian, a couple weeks ago, actually more like a month ago, and he and I are just diametrically opposed politically, socioeconomically on like every issue. But he's my friend. We've worked together in the past, and I was like, "Yeah, come on the podcast. Let's debate. Let's talk." And when we were recording, and I told him I was going to post it, he was a little nervous. He was like, "Oh, I hope you." Keep the trolls off me, like I don't want to be attacked for, and what he didn't realize is like, dude, 90% of my friends agree with you. Only 10% of my friends agree with me. So it's kind of like I've surrounded myself, and part of it has been living in New York. I don't know if you know this, but I lived in New York for the last like 15 years before I moved. I'm in Philly now. But all my friends are like liberal New Yorker types. Not all of them, but like 90%. So, and I don't identify that way anymore. So not that I consider myself like a conservative, but I'm definitely more in this nebulous space of, I'm just seeking truth, and I'm trying to, be on the right side of history and all these kind of things. But I don't just dive in deeper and deeper on the left, and that's just not me. So I'm with you on that. Like, I like to surround myself with people who think differently. But on the other hand, I've been kind of struggling lately because sometimes it can just feel exhausting. Don't you kind of find a comfort in surrounding yourself with people who kind of think and feel like you?
Right. Yeah. No, I know. Well, that's the thing. I'm finding fewer and fewer people who share a lot of the same ideals that I have. And it's, I feel like it's a little bit of a minefield to even voice anything that may seem slightly not to the left or something.
Yeah.
The moment you even hint that maybe you don't necessarily agree with everything someone is saying,
Yeah.
you almost become the enemy immediately. And
Yep.
from what I've witnessed, that does seem to be the case. So it's why I try very often to be neutral on my social media profiles, but on, like on a podcast, I think I still try to be neutral, but at least, provide some context to why I feel a certain way. And, yeah, it's tough. It's very, very, it's just a hard place to navigate.
Yeah, I think you've kind of been avoiding the politics. Like, I feel like the most controversial subjects you've kind of steered clear of, and I'm sure that was an intentional thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I know. I mean, I already know just based off of, again, my interactions on social media, and it. I'm not trying to convince anybody or trying to sway anyone to my way of thinking, so I try to keep it as neutral as possible because I believe that a lot of the things that I talk about either affect everyone or can, be relatable to everyone, as opposed to the moment I say anything that's either left or right, the audience stops listening and thinking that whatever else I'm going to say is not worth their time.
Yeah.
And that's completely untrue. I like to think that it's worth somebody's time somewhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I kind of learned that lesson a little bit, but like back-to-back weeks, I got into these big debates about politics and Black Lives Matter and racism and all this stuff with that friend Christian. And then the next episode was with my friend Obi, who was super opinionated about the subject. And we talked and debated for like over 2 hours on it. And I kind of realized after that, I'm like, this is the Introversion podcast. This is very much about, I think in a lot of ways similar to what you're doing with Online Friend Simulator, in the sense of it's very real, it's very raw, and I think it should be more about my perspective and my experiences that I'm sharing with the world, and being open to hearing other people's experiences and kind of bonding through that. I think that's really more what this is about. And this is not a crossfire debate show, And I feel like it was kind of starting to become that, and I think I've done wisely to kind of step back from that and I want to start getting more, like, I'm really super stoked to have you on today. And I want to start having guests on where we talk about life. I mean, there's so much to talk about in life, especially in 2020.
Yeah.
It might seem like the only thing to talk about is the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, but
Right.
really, there's life outside of all of that. The fact is, like, everything that we're dealing with, like loneliness, isolation, depression, sickness, just work, money, priorities. I don't know about you, but like, not to be all morbid or like a downer about this, but I've started just thinking about life and death, like
Yeah.
as we get older. I mean, it's like something like COVID comes and it presents death. Like, I don't think I'm going to die of COVID. I really am. I'm kind of over that whole fear factor, but it's still a reminder of I'm getting older, and I feel like I've kind of lost a year of my life in a sense. Like, I'm still productive. I'm still doing things that I want to do, but I feel like we're all kind of losing time here in a sense. And what I mean by that is I feel a little bit okay for myself, but I feel bad for people who, imagine this was like your 16th birthday or your 30th birthday or your 40th birthday, or your mom just died and there was no funeral because of COVID. Like, people missing major milestones, or your high school graduation and it's completely ruined by this thing. That only happens once, or your marriage or your wedding. These things only happen once in your life, and we've lost like 8 months of life, like what makes life worth living. And God knows how long this is going to drag on for. But I just feel like, look, the older I get, I try to value each day and live life to the fullest, carpe diem, like every day. And I feel like that's kind of tough to do these days because everything is shut down and locked down. And, so I just, I start to think very kind of like, well, how much time do I have left? I mean, do I really want to sacrifice a year or 2 years in lockdown by myself? Like, there's still so many things I want to do in life and connect with other people and travel and,
Yeah, and it's about really, refocusing what you feel is valuable to you, and I, because it is a perspective thing. I've recently really started understanding that people who want to be happy, right? Like the concept of happiness isn't something that you get. It's something that you perceive based off of the stuff that happens to you. Like, okay, I could easily just say, well, there's a packed parking lot, for instance, and I've been driving around for 10 minutes trying to find parking, and all of a sudden that one space opens up. I could either just be annoyed that I had to wait for 10 minutes, or just be happy that finally, after 10 minutes, I got that space. So looking at it, changing that type of perspective, especially now, I think is the key to keeping people sane, because you're right. There's nothing we can really do to gain the things that we're losing right now. We can force it, I guess, if we really want to. I mean, I know a couple who, despite everything, got married during the pandemic. They had a Zoom wedding. And
oh God. That just sounds so terrible to me. I mean, I don't want to be mean. I just feel like, wow, I would rather push my wedding off until this was all over, even if it meant delaying it for a year. But what if my wife thought differently? I don't know. It's just like, but the thought of a Zoom wedding to me is like, oh God.
Yeah, it's exactly what you thought it was.
So you partook in this.
Yes, he was a friend of mine, so I partook and I watched via my phone through the Zoom, and
wow.
You couldn't interact or do anything really. I mean, you just kind of watched the ceremony as it happened, and everyone was in masks, and it was
God.
fine. It was a fine ceremony.
You may now unmask your bride.
Exactly.
and hug her from a 6 foot distance. Oh, like, oh my God.
Kind of an A-frame hug, please, before it was again. It was something the wife wanted. She didn't want to delay. They had planned for a summer wedding, so they wanted to get it done and make it happen, and so they did. And to make it
Wow.
up to the rest of the the guests, they would have a ceremony when everything was over, but they just wanted to get it done. And you're right, it could have waited, but they were looking for anything, I think, at the time to kind of be different from their regular life of just staying home.
Yeah.
It's
like, fuck it, let's get married. Let's get married today. Like, let's do a Zoom wedding. Fuck it.
Pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, because they didn't do anything else, right? They couldn't go out.
Yeah.
They couldn't, it was grocery store and home and working from home,
Yeah.
which is all they had. And so I get it. I kind of get it. But yeah, so it's really just, I guess, trying to find those little things that get you through it. But you're right. I mean, it does feel like a year is going to be wasted. But I just recently did an episode on serendipity, and it sometimes it forces you into scenarios that you didn't expect. And I'm finding myself currently in a scenario that's actually very positive, that wouldn't have happened otherwise if the pandemic didn't or wasn't around.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. Like who knows? I might not have been doing this podcast episode with you right now if it weren't for, like so much time spent online and
Exactly.
more, it's like, I almost kind of wanted to ask you that. Like, have you noticed more of an importance to your podcast now? Because it is all about online. I mean, it's interesting for you to call it Online Friend Simulator in a time where everything is online now. So it's almost like very poetic. I don't know if have you thought about that? Like, wow, it's like I have the perfect podcast for all the online friends.
I mean, I'm noticing that, increased interaction. I noticed that like people are willing to write more, and I just feel like people need it. I don't think for a lot of folk this is new territory. They've never had to navigate not being able to go out and to go to the club or go to the bar or go wherever they need to go to socialize, and so it's a brand new world for them.
A whole new
And even though I'm not really talking necessarily anymore about like how to make friends online and things like that, I think just having the concept of knowing that there is a thing that like a friend simulator, I guess, out there, that it seems appealing. And so, more and more people. I just see more and more people just spending so much time online, which is not necessarily a good thing either, but. Actually, it's not. It's a terrible thing. Really, we shouldn't be spending this much time online.
Yeah,
but, it is what it is.
Oh, I think social media. It's interesting because like I've talked about this in great depth in my previous episodes, but like we're forced to be online. We're forced to just use our computers and be alone. But I'm almost kind of thinking about like because I do like the podcasting space. And I love what you're doing, and I'm starting to feel out what I'm doing, and I'm kind of digging this as well. But like social media is typically what people think of when they think of online, and social media is toxic as hell. So, it's like I think that's the real challenge is facing the reality that we're in right now, right? So everything has to be online, but how can we craft and nestle this and mold it into something that is actually positive, right? Or fruitful. So the point when December 31st, 2020 rolls around, we can look back on this year and somehow say, oh, you know what? There was actually a lot of good that came out of this year, and I think if people are going to feel that way, it's going to have to do something with figuring out this online solution, to the mess we're in.
Well, I think the biggest hurdle, really, especially for Americans, is to be able to get over the hurdle of politics. I think that's the biggest hurdle right now because it's the one thing that over the last 4 years have really fractured relationships. And if we can just, like you were saying, kind of remember that life continues on no matter what else is going on in the world. Our personal lives don't stop moving just because we don't like what's going on higher up. We should also be paying attention to what's going on around us. And when I was listening to your Unfriend podcast episode, and thinking about the type of people that we I guess, weeding out, I guess, of our lives as we realize maybe, they don't necessarily have any real impact or benefit in our lives anymore. Maybe taking that into account, because people who are using social media right now are keeping around a lot of people who don't benefit them in any way, shape, or form. They just feed into that anger. They just feed into that cycle of feeling anything, but it's all negative. It's all, and that's what bothers me the most about it. Is it just so? There's nothing uplifting about it. It's all doom and gloom, and I realize it looks like that, but how do you live a life? I mean, how do you wake up in the morning and want to get out of bed if that's the thing you think about the moment you get out of bed?
Yeah.
So I just think I don't know how to accomplish that, in all honesty, other than in not engaging, but consuming stuff that isn't a part of that world, right? Mm-hmm. That isn't talking about the politics or identity or whatever it is that happens to be really, pushing at your face. Just, hey, let's just talk about, people forgot, romance is not a thing anymore. Even you don't hear about that, right?
Well, when weddings are Zoom weddings, I think romance is officially dead, or
I think it is.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. For that alone, right? And there is still the capacity for romance and love and whatever online. It may not be traditional, and it may not be face to face, but I'm sad that I don't see that. Because there used to be that on Twitter, especially 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where people were just talking about how happy they were in this situation. And yeah, it was sickening, and yeah, I didn't necessarily like it, but at least it was positive.
Right. I remember those feelings of, God damn you.
Exactly.
Perfect love, falling in love, romance. But on the other hand, yeah, it was good to see, because at least it was like, that's how things are supposed to work in the world, at least. But now it's kind of like, it's just like, fuck all. Like, just,
yeah.
It's just nothingness out there. So speaking of which, to shift gears a little bit, I remember an episode you did several episodes ago where you were talking about the Facebook dating app or whatever.
Oh, so, yeah.
So I had heard of it, and I've still never actually used it. And in fact, during the pandemic, I have dropped down to only using Hinge and Coffee Meets Bagel. So I don't know if you've used either of those two, but those have been my two kind of go-to ones.
I know of them. I've never used them, but I definitely know of them. Yeah.
Okay. So have you used any apps during the pandemic? Are you interested in dating at all, or is it just kind of like, fuck it, like it's just not going to happen now, anyways?
Well, how do you? I mean, at the moment, I don't see the benefit of dating.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do, really? I guess you could have a nice Zoom date if you like, if that's what you're into. But outside of that, I think waiting it out would probably. Well, actually, I take it back. I probably should get back into it, because normally, in a situation where you can go out and have coffee or go out and have a nice dinner, putting your best face forward is so much easier when you can do it face to face, right? You can be so much more suave or, flirty, I guess, when you can actually hear the person and see their facial reactions and whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the best time to do it, because now you have to impress someone simply by your words.
It's like an extra difficulty factor, though. It's, like this is another thing. My friend Tommy, who's coming up tomorrow, we talked briefly on our last podcast we recorded about alcohol and dating, and we were talking about, like, I've only had like a couple drinks this whole year, and not by any dramatic sort of recovering alcoholic kind of reason at all. It's just kind of like, I'm home by myself. Like, drinking is like a social activity to me. Why would I bother drinking if I know it's not really healthy. So I'm just like, yeah. I went like 5 months without having a drink until my cousin came out to visit a couple weeks ago. So, but we were talking about it also in terms of dating, and what my friend Tommy was saying was something like, yeah, I think I'm done with like, he was kind of adopting this new form of dating during the pandemic of like, you know what? I think from now on, any dates I go on, even after the pandemic, I think I'm just going to go on a walk with them. No alcohol, no money spent, like just, you know, because it's like if you take the alcohol out, if you take the kind of all the surrounding ambiance of all that other shit, you're left with just, hey, this is a real person here. I'm a real person. We're talking. And it's kind of like you cut to the chase. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah.
But maybe that's makes it, it's either going to be real more quicker or it's going to fizzle more quicker because alcohol just kind of spikes up, like, you know, it's like an artificial, you know, enhancement to the quote unquote chemistry, you know.
Liquid confidence, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that's what
right.
it is.
Right.
And so it's not who you are. I mean, you know, you can't be drinking all the time, right?
Well, I guess
You can't-
some people can, I guess, but
I guess that's true.
probably not wise.
So you'll have to at some point. Yeah, I think the walk thing is actually a brilliant idea because one of the things that I noticed when I was doing the whole dating, Facebook dating, is it's very it's so artificial. Dating apps are so artificial and so fake and just so. There's nothing genuine about it usually. It's you. I think you said it too. I remember you said it on your own show. It's all of the same profile. You know,
right.
descriptions, and
Right.
that's it. It's
Yeah.
the same 5 things or emojis or a quote that just some random quote because the person, you know, the person's famous, so therefore I'm going to put an Einstein quote on there because I know who Einstein is. And that tells you nothing, and it doesn't, and they don't care anyway. Usually the other side doesn't even care anyway, because if you're not hot, why did they want, they're not going to respond to you anyway.
Right. Right. I remember listening to women talk about like, guys need to step up their game. They need to write like a creative message because hi or how are you is not going to cut it, right? I remember hearing women say that kind of thing all the time, still to this day. And back in the day when I actually used to use OkCupid, I would sit there and like look at her profile and scan for like some little pop culture thing she likes, this song, and then I would like try to have an opening line related to that movie, or just be like, hey, so yeah, but you said you like that, but what about it? You know, just like, but it takes time to do that, to create something. And I would do that for one girl, another girl. And it was like, maybe one reply back out of 10. And it's like, wow, what a colossal waste of time. You know?
It is because you were one of 50 other guys that went and did exactly the same thing.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, I mean, I don't want to discourage online dating because it works for quite a few people, but it's really a lot of it is luck, and a lot of it is the right angle from where you took your selfie, the lighting and the right angle.
Right. Well, I've gotten so good at online dating, so to speak, where I'm like, I can decode girls' profiles. So, it's just like, I'm not that it's a skill to brag about, but it's basically like, you see the girls taking photos from certain angles, and the girls who use Snapchat filters for all of their pictures. And, you know, it's just like the same patterns, and you see, I'm like, no, we're done here.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
And because you know what you get a sense of what it's like in reality, you know. And anytime you see it, I hate to sound like a terrible male chauvinist right now, but fuck it, I'm going to say it anyways. But anytime you see a girl's profile and there's like 5 or 6 pictures in it, and each picture she's gaining 5 or 10 pounds. When you go meet her in person, I guarantee you she'll be like 10 or 15 pounds heavier than the last picture. So
and you're not, because look, here's the thing. It's not like the women are not doing the same for the men. You know, it's not like they're looking at our pictures and they're looking and making sure, well, does he have a gut? I don't know. Or Does he have a six pack? Great, I'll go talk. I mean, they're judging us the same way we're judging
Yeah, yeah.
them when we're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
dating.
yeah.
So you don't
Right.
have to feel bad about any of that stuff because
Yeah.
it's happening both ways. And yeah, you're right. You know, the few that I went on, yeah, it was wow. You did a really good angle because I didn't think you looked like this.
Right. You're a really good photographer. You should list that on your profile.
Exactly. exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely yeah. Those I don't know. I think I'm glad I'm not really doing that right now. It just seems exhausting, and I'm already exhausted.
Yeah. I've talked with a few girls through the apps, and this is the interesting thing about the Introversion podcast and the site itself. So apparently I'm very controversial. This is news to me, but apparently like the stuff that I talk about on the podcast or that I post on the Introversion site, it's highly controversial in 2020, you know? So I list it on my dating profiles now, actually. So I use introversion.com or the podcast as a litmus test. So I got into a debate about this with my mom the other day because she was basically saying, no, like you need to ease, like I'm such a handful, right? Because I'm such a like intriguing, weird, quirky character of a guy with all of this weird backstory. I lived in Germany, a military brat, preacher's kid, left religion. I create all these brands. I do all this art design, travel. Like there's just a lot to my story, and it can be overwhelming to people. And my perspectives are neither left nor right, you know, politically. I'm just kind of like I'm a unique, you know, character. But my mom was kind of like, yeah, you need to ease people in to yourself, because if you just put it all out there in a raw way, it's gonna they won't be able to handle it because they don't really know you yet. And I'm like, I see that point, and it's like, yeah, I understand your point, but on the other hand, I'm like, eventually they're gonna have to know this real me. So I kind of feel like let's just cut to the chase. And if you can't even tolerate one episode of my podcast, you know, where I'm basically just, this is myself, just raw, it's me, unfiltered, this is who I am. If you're so repulsed or turned off by 10 minutes into my podcast, it was never going to work out between us in the end anyways. So
Right.
that's why I like it as a litmus test. I proudly list it on my profile, and I'm like, yeah, go check it out. And I've had a couple girls recently, they've messaged me and say, oh, I love your Instagram profile and you're cool. But I didn't find them attractive or interesting.
Right.
So it has to go both ways, you know, but
Oh yeah.
ideally, you know, one of these days, some cool, cute girl will like me back or send me a thing and say, hey, I love your podcast. And I look at her and I'm like, oh, wow, I like you too. And then we'll go from there. But it's so rare. And not just with the pandemic. I just feel like, you know, the love connection thing and the online space is, I don't know, man. I've kind of given it up. I mean, you're in your 30s, right?
I'm going to be entering my 40s this year. Yeah.
Oh, wow. See, that's going to suck if you have to spend your 40th birthday in lockdown. That would suck.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, with the rest of the world.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. It's like I had a good 40th birthday. I mean, I went back to New York City after I had left New York City. I went back and hung out with all my friends for my 40th, like 3 years ago. I'm 43 now. But with regard to the dating thing, though, I just feel like I'm open to possibilities. At the same time, I'm no longer pursuing it. You know, so
Yeah.
how do you feel turning 40? Like where you're at in the game?
Well, I mean, something I haven't been able to, I guess, reveal yet, and I guess, I mean, I don't mind talking about it here, was that I ended up finding somebody.
Recently?
Yeah, and it was, and it directly links to my latest Serendipitous episode because it was serendipitous. It was just, I interacted with someone, weirdly enough, on Twitter.
Okay, yeah. I just listened to that episode earlier today, yeah. So, okay,
Yeah.
now it gets a little juicier, a little more detailed.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't go quite where I didn't quite do the quite big reveal yet. But yeah, no, I just randomly interacted with somebody whom I interact with people all the time on Twitter, and I normally just think, okay, a couple of likes, maybe a comment, and I'll never talk to them again. We'll follow each other, and life moves on. But in this particular case, we just kept asking questions about each other for some strange reason. I had no idea what they looked like. They didn't have a profile picture. So I just thought, well, if anything, this is, well, I didn't look at it romantically at all. I just like, if anything, I'm just making a new friend. And
oh my God, before I forget, you need to watch, there's a Japanese movie called, I think it's Moteki. And it basically means, shit, I'll include a link in the podcast notes, but it's it's so much of what you're describing right now. Because like this girl and this guy, they start chatting over Twitter, and they're both music fans, and they're going back and forth talking about music. She doesn't have a profile picture. He doesn't even know she's a female, and they're just going back, and it ends up being this whole love. They meet in real life. He finds out she's a girl, and she's really cute, and like all this, the whole movie. But Love Strikes, that's what it's called. So it's the Japanese term is moteki, I think. But
moteki, okay,
yeah. But Love Strikes, I think you would love that movie. I'm assuming you probably like Japanese
because
stuff.
It definitely sounds like what's happening right now. Because this was about it's been about 2 weeks. We just ended up tweeting each other for a few days, and then into Messenger and WhatsApp, and the big reveal of what she looks like, and I'm like, oh wow, okay.
Okay.
This is strange, and it was unexpected and unintentional, and I had no desire for anything like this to happen, and it just did. And it was a matter of just kind of seeing that opportunity and going for it. Now, I don't know, again, what's going to happen to this, because this is, the other strange scenario is this is international.
Oh wait, she's not in LA.
No, she's in another country.
Oh wow.
Which is much more complicated, but at the same time,
that answers my next question, which is going to be, have you guys met yet? And so I guess not.
No, but I mean, there's not. Well, once everything lifts, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. But yeah, there is that additional layer of, well, this is someone who is in a completely other country, different culture, not different culture necessarily, but just, enough differences in that sense that it technically shouldn't have worked. Like we should have very little in common, yet somehow we did. And it continued to build and build every day. And it was not something I had intended or anticipated. And Twitter is full of people who are much, much younger than me. And luckily she was not. She was, so that even worked out as well.
She's about your age?
Oh yeah. That surprised me even more, because again, the vast majority of Twitter is like early 20s, I mean, nothing that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I'm not that much older, but to find someone closer to my age and just like really into the same things that I was really surprising. So, yeah. Before, if we were to have done this show 2 weeks ago, I would have said, well, I'm perfectly content at the moment, not really thinking about it, because I wasn't thinking about it because of the pandemic. I wasn't thinking about it because of this situation. I was ready to start up again when everything was quote unquote back to normal. Now the game has changed and I don't really know what's going to happen, but it's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah, this is an interesting development.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of good with the pandemic, the fact that it's a long distance remote thing, because you can just take this time to really bond and get to know each other. You know, because even if there wasn't the pandemic right now, you wouldn't necessarily be able to jump on a plane. And I mean, I guess you could eventually, but it's kind of a big deal. Yeah. I've never done that. I've never traveled out of the state to meet a girl I met online, but much less out of the country.
Yeah.
But this way you can have some time to, I guess, get to know each other, and just digitally.
Yeah, and I think that it's been working that way fairly well, because it slows everything down. It takes away a lot of that that pressure of dating, right? When you're just kind of naturally wanting to get to know each other, it really especially when it's unexpected, it just makes it a lot easier, I guess, as well, because it's just a happy coincidence or a happy serendipitous scenario. I don't know, but yeah, I think again, if there was no pandemic, this would never have happened in the first place anyway, because I wouldn't have been online. I would have been out more. I would have been doing more things. I would have been dating more on these apps, and that would have been my life. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen to everybody, but wow, I mean, they say that stuff like this happens, in movies and whatnot. And then when it happens to you, it's just like, wow, I guess there's some truth to it. So I don't know. But yeah, taking it day by day.
You're a real life, you've got mail.
The odd thing about this form of communication is that you're more likely to talk about nothing than something, but I just want to say...
Sort of, yeah.
The fucked up 2020 pandemic version.
Yeah.
Wow. No, it's
yeah. Go on. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's cool to hear. It's cool to hear you talking about this, because it's kind of like I'm one of those people where I just grow increasingly jaded about everything, and sometimes it's comforting for me to hear that something good like that can. I mean, it would be nice if it happened to me, but at least if it can happen at all, that's some hope. That like, okay, so that that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. Oh well, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, hey, look, I was in the jaded camp. Believe me, I was very much just. What's the point? I mean, it gets frustrating, and it gets really discouraging, and what do you do after a while? It almost seems like you're just running in a little hamster wheel, and it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, especially because it's been, despite my recent scenario, before that, it was like 10 years of nothing. So it's nice to see something like that things turn around at least a little bit every once in a while. And yeah, you're right. It is. It hopefully this story gives someone a little bit of hope, because it's not as it's not as clear cut as I thought it was going to be. That's for sure. Things just happen, and it's very, very interesting. Well, it's very weird.
Maybe you just exposed my problem all along. Maybe the problem is I've been looking in the United States. I've been looking in my own country.
Oh, well, again, this was unintentional. I mean,
right. It's not a mail order bride kind of situation. I get it.
When they say there's someone for everyone, apparently it's not in the same continent. It's in different continents too. So,
well, this was like what is this part of my life plans like right now? Like I kind of wanted to get a couple things going with like streams of income this past year, and then I really wanted to go back to Japan. I visited in 2005. I loved it, and it's been too long. I wanted to get back out there and try out life there and try to meet some people and see what happens, and that plan has been thrown out the window, of course, this year because of everything. But, it's weird to talk about. I did an episode I posted it on Independence Day on July 4th. And in that episode, I was talking also about the American identity and what it means to me or what it doesn't mean to me.
Oh, yeah.
And like, how do you feel in general, but also this year in terms of like, do you feel super American? Do you feel attached to this country? Do you feel like you could just up and go somewhere else in the world, or somewhere else in the world might possibly be a better fit?
I think, I think I could pick up and go. And I think that's the problem, is we're trying to feel like we need to fit somewhere when the world is, the world, you can fit anywhere, really. I don't know why we have to feel like we need to be, well, if you're an American, you can only fit in America, or you can, if you're this, you only fit in this place. I think those limitations really are what's causing a lot of our strife right now, is we're really, everyone's limiting ourselves. We're all limiting ourselves in some way, shape, or form. and we don't allow ourselves to take that leap. And what's funny is I watch a lot of YouTube of people who are from different parts of the world moving to Japan, funnily enough, and making a life in Japan.
Yeah,
and
I've followed a few of those YouTubers as well.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's like, well, if they can do it, now mind you, I wouldn't document everything I was doing there, but it's like they were able to make a life out of it. They were able to really incorporate themselves into a society that doesn't necessarily want them, but they're there and they're making a really good run of it. And I feel that here's I guess this will be controversial, but I think the American identity is the biggest problem. This individualism, this thing where we have to feel like we ourselves are better than everyone else, or we ourselves are independent from the rest of society or humanity.
Yeah.
And it's obvious, right? People who don't want to wear masks, or people who want to yell at Walmart employees for making them do exactly what it says outside the door. Like, what makes you special? And we live in our current American society builds us up to believe we are special. We're all special, and we should be treated as such. And that's obviously not the case. Otherwise, it negates everyone else, and that means no one else has any meaning. And that's obviously not true. And I think that's why when you say you want to do, I think that's a great idea, to just pick up and move somewhere else, a whole new world. A whole new world. That could be your fit, or that you could find yourself really acclimating to that type of environment, as opposed to here, where if you're already feeling frustrated, like I feel frustrated being in the United States. I feel especially being in California.
Yeah,
California's a crazy place.
I would get the hell out of California if I were still there. I used to live in San Francisco before I moved to New York, and I don't know. California just seems like a bad idea right now all around.
Well, San Francisco is like California times 1,000. I mean, San Francisco is like the rawness of the ideals of California. Well, I live in a place where there's enough diversity that it allows me to not feel like I can't feel normal. But yeah, I couldn't imagine living in San Francisco. That's got to be rough.
Yeah.
But yeah. You're not the first person to say, if you live in California, it's probably time to get out.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in New York during the golden era, I feel like. So I left in 2016, and I'm so glad I got out. So, I mean, I lived in San Francisco from 2000 to 2001, or no, 99 to 2001, right after I graduated college. And I was so glad I got out of there when I went to New York. And New York ended up being a great fit for me. But then eventually I was like, I'm so glad I got out of New York. And, I've been in Philly now for like a year. I guess coming up on 2 years now. That's crazy.
Wow.
It just feels like a year, but like technically in November it will be 2 years. So I guess about a year and a half. But it's fine here. I haven't really plugged in. I don't know a ton of people here. I'm not really... But I could definitely just up and leave anytime from Philly. It's just I don't know what's next. So yeah, this is really kind of re-sparking the ideas in my head about living abroad. Because everything you're talking about, it's true in terms of like, I think it's all rooted in fear and it's rooted in comfort, which are interrelated. But I think people just get comfortable. It's like, well, and I felt that. Like I did an artist residency in Berlin 2011, and I went to high school in Germany, so I've actually lived in Germany for 6+ years out of my life. But when I go there, it's like 110 outlets instead of 220, and you got to have adapters, and just like they do everything differently, and it can make you feel just uncomfortable, and I think if you don't stick through it and plow through that. And again, probably with the same the YouTubers in Japan that you and I have probably both watched, I get a sense of that, where they're explaining what life is like there. And sometimes there'll be those episodes where they they bust out these forms that are all like this really cryptic Japanese, long ass forms you have to fill out, and they're confusing in order to get like to rent a room or just like.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I'm like, oh God, what a headache and what a hassle and how stressful that would be. And I'm like, I'll just stick around here. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no,
But-
okay, yeah. I mean, there was an episode that I saw somebody, he bought a car, and the police had to go and measure a parking spot to make sure he could have a place to put the car.
God.
In Japan, like that's a
Yeah.
lot of hassle. But again, that's that's what they're used to. And I mean, yeah, you're right. It is, once you get comfortable, and you get, you allow yourself to get lethargic. You allow yourself to. You allow yourself to just not grow after that, right? You don't allow yourself those challenges that allow
Yeah.
you to be, something better, if potentially better, I guess. But hey, I know that feeling. I haven't left California. I'm still here.
Dude, like right now, it's hard enough of a challenge just to like get by right now under this lockdown pandemic shit.
Oh
So
well, yeah, no,
it's like-
definitely, yeah.
the thought of a challenge on top of a challenge. I mean, like, I give you kudos for even trying to pursue a relationship in this time. Like, I know you didn't set out to, but I'm like, it's an international long distance relationship to pursue that online, like in the age of the pandemic where flights are banned and nobody's allowed out of America, and it's like that's an uphill battle, but I think kind of the biggest risks in life can actually yield the biggest rewards, but I think a lot of us are just too afraid to go there.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and trust me, and this whole thing, like, I mean, as great as everything is going, there's a huge amount of fear in it, sure, because I'm investing time now. I'm investing time and myself into this whole thing,
Yeah.
and who knows if it leads nowhere? Wow, I could have been doing anything else.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. I mean, that's what it takes, and I think I hope you do pursue the going abroad. It's just you've done it. I mean, I'm a little surprised you're apprehensive. You've done it. You've lived places for years. You lived places outside of the U.S. for years. So why is it now all of a sudden kind of a problem? I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I could come up with excuses all day, there'll never be a shortage of excuses for anybody, to do something. And that's part of the problem, is that sometimes it feels like it's too risky for the small amount of reasons why you want to go do something, and the limited chances of it working out. But there is an infinite list of reasons to not do something,
Oh sure, yeah.
So that's the struggle. But yeah, this is inspiring to hear that, and I'll of course be listening to your podcast for more cryptic details that I'm sure you will omit on yours.
My thoughts will be probably either in the next one. We'll see where I am in the next one or the other or the one afterwards. But I just it just happened, so I didn't feel like I needed to do the big reveal. But hey, I'm here. We're talking.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, I
Another
feel
conversation.
I feel honored to be part of the semi reveal or the phase one reveal, or that's cool. But okay, so shifting gears a little bit,
Sure.
one thing I was really curious I wanted to ask you about is what is the split like, or the divide like in your mind or in actuality between your friends in real life who are like your friends versus like online friends. So describe sort of what that's like for you.
Well, it's kind of been, the split has kind of been made for me. So I used to have a group of in-person friends, and I mean, I guess I still have a couple, but I had a larger group of friends whom I spent a lot of time with in person for a very long time, for I guess 8 out of the last 10 years. doing all sorts of things, and they took precedence over the online friends because they were there. You know, they were the people who I could physically touch, and they were tangible. While the online friends were, of course, just voices or words. And then when the in people friends, when their lives continued on and it continued on without me, I realized, well, wait a minute, the definition of the essence of what a friend isn't their proximity. It's really, just how it's defined differently. And so my online friends have developed more importance to me in that sense. And they are now a much more prominent part because they will go out of their way to do things for me, or they even if we haven't talked for a long time, they don't they'll catch up or they'll ask how I'm doing randomly because they thought of me for just a second, which is not something friends that I had in person did. And I believe it's just because there's that convenience, right? You know, when you're there, you take advantage. You not take advantage. You take for granted.
Take it for granted,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you take it for granted that they're there. You know, they're 5 miles away, whatever. You know, we can just drive by, say hello. But that's not the case. You know, if their life moves on and they feel like you're not necessarily needed for their life to move on, they're perfectly fine just kind of putting you off to the side. And it was an eye-opener to see that, for me, friendship no longer is defined by whether they are online or off. It's just they are a friend or they're not a friend. Because when I see these online friends, it's always, I'm treated in a way that I wasn't necessarily treated with the people who were closest to me. So, and it's a much more fulfilling experience and relationship I have with these people, because I think the distance and that time. I think the distance and knowing that that they value the time more when you see them on occasion. They take advantage of that time. They want it to be more meaningful. While, again, the people who were right across the street,
right down the street, right?
Yeah.
So these online friends you're talking about, are these mostly friends you have met at some point in
Yes,
your life?
I've met most of my online friends. Yeah.
Okay. They just live elsewhere.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I initially met. We initially became friends online through some type of common thing like podcasting or Twitter, and I'm pretty sure I've met. No, I'm pretty sure I met all but the people in the UK. They're the only ones I haven't met yet. But anyone in the States who I had been online friends with, yes, yeah, I've met them in person. I made sure to, because I think it's important that at some point, if you know someone for that long and you share these online these quote unquote online memories, to at least buy him a beer or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like when I did the Introversion Project back in the early 2000s, I ended up having a whole bunch of fans, and when I moved to New York, I ended up meeting a lot of them. And
Nice.
And we're still friends to this day, some of them. And
great.
it's cool. It's cool to go from the online world to the offline, especially when it's not online dating is kind of its own beast where you just exchange a couple of messages and then you meet up. Like, people are so used to that, it's whatever. But what you and I are talking about right now is something completely different, where you actually build more depth online, and it's kind of in a platonic way a lot of the times, where it's just bonding over time. And it's like, if you can bond with somebody online via Twitter or Facebook, whatever, for over a long period of time, I think I kind of get what you're saying. Like, there's kind of something that's more substantial to that, because it's that much more difficult, but it makes it that much more meaningful or special, because of the difficulty factor to even get to that point. So when you actually meet in person, it is kind of more special. Yeah. So was this also kind of this realization you had? Was this also sort of what prompted you to start the Online Friend Simulator podcast in the first place, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was that, and it was, it was mostly losing that connection with my in-person friends, and realizing that, yeah, a lot of the people whom I connect with most are online, and what also prompted it is when you listen to a podcast and you get to know the hosts, you tend to feel like, even though they don't know who you are, you kind of feel friendly with them. Mm-hmm. And I met a couple of hosts a few years back, and they had no idea who I was, but they knew I was a listener, and they were really wonderful, like, people to meet. And it made me realize, well, if I could feel this way towards people who've never met me, I wonder if I can produce that same type of feeling and make that specific, as opposed to these people who just do a comedy show, or they do, whatever. Mine is, yeah, hey, I realize you don't have a friend, or maybe you do have friends, but they're not around right now. Hey, here, I'm here. Let's talk. So that was all of those different factors kind of led me to really want to do this, and yeah, people seem to be, I mean, people seem to like it, so good.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool, and I encourage all of my listeners right now to check it out. I'll have all the links and all your info in the show notes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just it's really cool, man. So you've been doing it for like a year, a little over a year or so.
I can now say it's off and on for like 2 years, I think, because I'm on episode 55. So even if I was doing it once a week, it would at least have been a year. But I know that there are gaps. So yeah, it's been about 2 years. Yeah.
Cool.
I like to think so.
Yeah. So, but you've been podcasting for longer than this podcast, right? Because you had the other projects you were doing, right?
Oh yeah. I don't know. Have I ever talked about what got me into podcasting? I don't know if I ever have. Maybe.
Well, if you have, I haven't heard that story. So
okay,
do tell.
So yeah. No. So about a decade ago, I got into a very nasty separation/divorce, and I was not working at the time. I was homeless, and I needed a means to provide myself therapy. I needed a way to keep myself sane. And so I scrounged some money together to get a nice little blue microphone. I had a laptop already, and I just started recording.
The Blue Yeti?
Blue Yeti, yeah. That was my first mic.
The go-to mic for podcasters starting out.
Oh, yeah. And so I started doing a show called Geek Love Radio, which I didn't realize had already a name that was already taken like 4 years prior. I did not do my research.
Wait, what was it called? What was it called? Eat Love Radio?
Geek Love Radio, yeah.
Oh, Geek Love Radio.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did Geek Love Radio for 4 years, I think. But what got me started was needing that therapy, needing to be able to talk about my issues and my problems and like my thoughts on what was going on in a medium that I already was listening to. I mean, I was already listening to a bunch of podcasts in 2010, so I was like, okay, if they can do it, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And so I did the show, and I hadn't stopped. I've been creating content ever since, and it evolves to different things. And I think luckily Geek Love Radio I think was the most popular show I ever had, but it unfortunately was getting repetitive, so I ended up closing it down, talking about the same thing. I was still single after 4 years of doing the show, and part of it was moving on and finding a new relationship didn't happen. So yeah, I just decided, okay, well, I've said what I needed to say, and I shut it down, and I moved on to other things. But yeah, I needed to. It was much needed self-therapy before I could get real therapy, and it helped a lot. And ever since then, I made sure I at least had one podcast. Even if I was doing some type of pop culture or something, I needed one podcast that it was dedicated to at least attempting to help other people out there. Mm. Yeah. So
cool. Yeah, I do think there is something therapeutic about. I mean, I guess it depends what kind of podcast you start, but it sounds like with your intentions, with how you started out, and also with what you're doing with Online Friend Simulator and what I'm doing with Introversion, I think I got a little bit, like I was saying earlier, I think I got a little bit carried away in terms of dealing with the issues of our time, like with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, and getting into those debates with people who I don't see eye to eye with. And I kind of got into that space, and there was some nobility to that in the sense of like, look, I don't want to argue back and forth on Facebook about these things, but I want to have genuine, real, in-depth conversations. And I felt like podcasting was the great way to do that right now. So that's kind of what has been happening for several weeks here. But when I posted this episode last week, The Shift, after the Unfriend episode, which is kind of a continuation of the Unfriend episode, I've kind of started to feel like I think what you and I are doing right now, and I think like the kind of conversations I want to have with some other friends of mine who are like creative people, I totally agree with you when you're talking about like when you're doing Geek Love, and after a while you felt like it just got repetitive, and that's one thing that I like about what I'm doing here and now. And I'm still filling it out, but I like this direction I'm heading in, because like my ratio right now has been one guest episode, then one solo episode, one guest, one solo. So alternating. But I even though I have a whole bunch of guests now, I'm queuing up, I'm recording this weekend and Monday, but I was thinking I kind of want to start doing like 2 solo episodes to 1 guest episode, because it's really just like, I kind of like just being able to talk and like, it's almost like, I don't know if you feel this way too because yours is mostly solo episodes, but like if you do feel like you're just kind of sculpting ideas just out loud, you're just like thinking out loud, and you're kind of talking to yourself, but you're totally cool with people listening in on it. But it's not about right or wrong answers or facts or declarations, but it's more like it's a process, and you're just feeling out your thoughts, your feelings, your observations, in order to come out of it, when you're done recording, you can listen back to it and be like, you know what? Yeah, I think it is very therapeutic. It's cathartic, right? Like you just, you kind of realize things. And I think you also help other people realize things in the process, right?
Yeah, because there's no one answer to everything. And so I try to, what's funny is I'm afraid that it's just a flow of just random thoughts. Quite often, it's like, oh, I'm just saying stuff now, Right. There's no.
I notice when you do that on the podcast, and you're like, I don't know, I'm rambling. This is meaningless, isn't it? Like, but I'm like, no, dude, it's good. It's good shit.
Okay, good.
So this is one of the things where it's like, I love Seinfeld. Like that's probably my favorite sitcom of all time. But what I love about it is it's literally the show about nothing.
It's about nothing.
No story?
No, forget the story.
One of my friends wrote a review of my podcast, and he was kind of referring to that, and he's just like, yeah, it's a podcast about nothing and everything, So, it's somewhere between nothing and everything. But I like that, it's just like, I feel like these kind of podcasts are few and far between, though, because usually a podcast is like about a Game of Thrones podcast, or a Star Wars podcast, or a cooking podcast, or a politics, or a right-wing podcast, or a left-wing podcast. And you know exactly what you're going to get, and that's all it is. But it's so much more about the topic than the process, right? Of thoughts and feelings, and, because like neither of our podcasts would be classified in a self-help category either.
No.
It's not really just, I guess it's kind of like a personal storytelling blog kind of thing, but it's not even that, because like a lot of times, like, you won't tell a story, I won't tell a story. It's just pontificating. It's just, whatever it is. I don't even think there's a word for that, but I think that's what's cool about it.
Yeah, and I think the reason why a lot of this stuff isn't, I think that why you don't see more of this is because this is hard to listen to sometimes. I think people want to hold on to the things that they can easily get an emotion out of. This is why we have our little circles, why we have our echo chambers, because it's the easiest way to get that hit of whatever we're looking for. And self-reflection is hard, or thinking about life is hard sometimes. And I feel that these things these shows need to be out there, because there's people out there who are trying to find a way to, are finding some way out of this maze and trying to figure stuff out. And they don't necessarily know where to turn to or who to talk to, or even how to even, create those first thoughts of like, well, wait a minute, what do I need to do about myself? Or what is it about this current, what's bothering me about, Facebook right now? What is it about it that's bothering me? And then one of us will say something. It's like, oh, that's it. That's what's been bothering me. I couldn't put it into words, but this guy did. And I think that, hopefully, I'm subscribed to your podcast. I mean, I'm definitely going to be listening more. And I think that for myself, I this is the kind of thing I like. I need this kind of thoughtfulness, and even if it's considered rambling, I need that. I think we all kind of need a little bit of that. Yeah. We're too busy distracting ourselves with television and movies and whatever, and it's like, no, we shouldn't keep distracting ourselves. We should probably think about what's going on with us.
Yeah. I think you're spot on when you said, like, just most people aren't into this self-reflection thing. Mm-hmm. And I think guys like you and me are kind of the anomaly, right? Because we're so self-reflective. We're like not just thinkers, we're overthinkers,
Oh yeah.
But so we're like so like analytical and like just neurotic, I guess. So
that's a good word.
Yeah. So kind of to a fault, but it's a blessing, it's a curse, but I think it's good for us to put that out there in the world. And, I'm stoked that you're tuned in and you'll be listening. 'Cause I think all of this is a process, and I kind of enjoy seeing, so this is why we didn't really, maybe next time if we record together, like I wanted to do like a little pop quiz for you and prepare it. I didn't have time today, but I wanted to ask you some questions about like your pop culture taste and all this kind of stuff, because I'm just curious. But a lot of this stuff that I like, it's like I was shocked when I told some friends of mine recently, like not recently, but this past year, some of my favorite movies, and they were like, what the fuck? Like, that was fucking boring, is like pointless. What a pointless movie. And like, I was like, what? Really?
I want to know what this movie is.
Oh, well, it's not just one movie. It was like multiple movies that I liked that people thought were shit, So like Before Sunrise. Have you seen Before Sunrise?
I have not seen Before Sunrise, no.
Okay. So check it out. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. But basically, it's Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy. Again, with your story, serendipity, I think you might actually really like this. So basically, he's an American. She's French. Mm-hmm. He sees this girl on the train going through Austria, and they sit down next to each other on the train, and they just start chatting, and he's got to get off, or she's got to get off at the next stop. No, that's not right. She's going all the way to like back to Paris. He gets off in Austria, and then he's like, he gets back on the train real quick, and he's like, look, I feel like we have something here. Like, you want to get off this train and let's just like walk around the town, and so he convinces her into doing it, and they basically just walk around Vienna, and they get to know each other and talk about all these things in life. And I'm just like, it's like podcasting. It's like what we're doing now, though. It's just two people, strangers, they met and they have conversations, and it's really fascinating to me. But these are the kind of movies that I like. Or like Swingers is another favorite movie of mine. Yeah. But where there's
they don't like Swingers?
Well, not so much Swingers. I think people like Swingers, but the consistency about Swingers or a show like Seinfeld or Before Sunrise, or it's like nothing really happens in the movie, but it's all about the dialogue. It's all about the connection between people. It's all about the in between, the moments. But I feel like that's what life is.
If there's any kind of magic in this world, it must be in the attempt of understanding someone, sharing something.
Like life, sometimes when I watch all of these movies, these Hollywood movies, I just feel like, yeah, I'm just watching this Hollywood production out there, but I'm like, it's a fantasy or it's a, it's a crazy thing or a crime drama. But like my life is not full of crime and drama and murder and magic powers and time travel. And, my life is just the regular day-to-day stuff. And sometimes it's kind of nice to see that represented in some form, whether it's cinema or a podcast or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a freak to be into that kind of stuff. I don't know, but
no, I think no. I'm with you 100%. I'm already interested in this movie. I need to watch this so badly.
Oh yeah, yeah. You should. Dude, I can. Next time we record, I would love to have you on again at some point. So I will have the quiz prepared for you. For
oh boy,
I want to get your take on like all these different movies and shows and get your thoughts. But I have a whole list of recommendations for you. I just got a feeling that you'll like. There's a Japanese movie called Kamikaze Girls.
これだってジャスコで1500円よ。このブラウスが2800円。
Oh, okay. I need to watch more foreign film. That's something that I haven't sat down and done. I really need to allow myself to do that because I don't know. I just haven't done it. But
they require more concentration, of course, because you can't be like multitasking watching a.
That's
watching a
you have subtitles to read.
Yeah, right. You got work to do while you watch.
Oh, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I'm more than happy to bring whatever you got. I'll go after it. Sure, you're good.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I think we're about at time here. I'm kind of winding down here, getting a little drowsy in my time zone.
Yeah.
So if you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share, definitely mention your URLs, social media, and all that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I listened to your podcast and I thought, this guy's better than me. What does he want me on?
Oh, man, I'm really flattered. I'm flattered. Thank you.
So I was like, wow, all right. I guess he's slumming it for this one. But yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of the shows or all the other episodes that you got. I was very fascinated with that Unfriend episode. But I mean, if anyone's interested in, I guess, my point of view on friendship and relationship and stuff like that, yeah, sinceresarcasm.net is the website. It has all of my podcasts that I'm a part of, and all the shows that I do outside of that as well. If you're into improv, that's something I just recently kind of picked up over the last couple of years, is doing improv, which is something I never thought I'd ever say out loud. But it's very, it's some of the most fun I've had trying to really just think of stuff on. Because I already do that on my podcast, might as well do it in a comedic form. Yeah. So, so that you can check out shows like Super Geeked Up on there. But I am at AKA the other guy on the social medias. If anyone's interested in following me, I just randomly tweet about. I don't know. My last tweet was like, if you have no butt curvature, will a pair of cargo pants stay on you even if they have their pockets full? I don't know. How do pants work? I have no idea.
See, these are the important questions that matter to all of us. Yes. Oh man, if not just important because they take our mind off of all the other insanity that's killing our brain cells.
Biggest reason why I tweet that kind of stuff. Biggest reason why I do it.
Yeah.
Get our mind off things.
All right, man. Well, it was great having you on. Yep.
Thank you.
And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Hey, you. Yes, you. I just wanted to say thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're currently listening on. That way you can obviously get notified as soon as new episodes arrive. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star rating and consider writing a brief review. It just takes a second, and it really helps in order to get this podcast ranking higher so that more people can discover it. And the better this podcast is doing, the more prominent guests we can get on the show, and also the more time I can devote to it, which means more episodes and better episodes. And speaking of better episodes, what would you like to see more of on the show? Are there specific topics you'd love to see covered? Do you have thoughts of your own on the subjects discussed today? I'd love to hear from you. just shoot an email to podcast@introversion.com, or you can reach out to me on social media. I'm Jay Caslow on pretty much every platform, Twitter, Instagram, and the rest. And last but not least, if you've been enjoying listening to the podcast and also checking out the daily blog at introversion.com, I invite you to visit patreon.com/introversion, where you can become an official Introversion patron for as little as $3 a month. That's literally 10 cents a day. Anyway, just consider it. Otherwise, just click like, share this podcast with friends and family who you think would enjoy it. It's 2020, so be safe out there, and yet go live your life. I know that's kind of a paradox, but we'll figure this out one way or another. Anyway, have a good one. Until next time.